and their outbreak. And
welcome to the new Workforce Navigator webinar series. My name is Matt Piesold, and I'm a labor and workforce specialist located in Kansas City, Missouri. This webinar series features industry and workforce experts that can connect us to the workforce resources, training, and data necessary to help our communities, businesses, and workforce grow and thrive. It is my honor to welcome my colleague, Dr. Mark White, a state specialist with MU Extension. In today's webinar, Dr. White will explain how to access publicly available data so that you can answer basic workforce questions and better understand local workforce trends. Lastly, I want to inform you that this presentation is being recorded but will be stopped for the question and answer section. Please post your questions in the chat feature or save your questions till the end, and we will address them at that time. I would now like to turn the webinar over to Dr. White and let him introduce himself.
all right. Hi, everyone. I'm, as Matt said, I'm Mark White with MU's Extension's Labor and Workforce Development Program. What we're going to talk about today is I want to basically take some time over the next hour to introduce you to some key sources of labor market information and how you can access that information. And in doing so, I want to be able to help give a basic explanation about where these data come from and how you can use them to answer some common questions that you might arise in your day-to-day work. So before we dive in too far, let's just set the stage a little bit about what is labor market information. And labor market information is data and information that tells us a little bit something about our labor market. Basically, it's like where's our supply of workers and where's the demand for workers coming from. And it includes a bunch of different types of information ranging from any kind of like socioeconomic data to employment characteristics, like how many people actually are working, labor force participation, how much are people making, all sorts of those different types of data points. And a lot of this information, as you may or may not be aware, come from a number of different sources. So there's a lot of different suppliers of labor market information. A lot of them, really our federal statistical data agencies are really kind of crucial in providing us with a lot of information that we need. The big three, if you're thinking about what are the big three federal statistical agencies, there's obviously the Census Bureau, which counts the people. That's kind of the big one. As I say, it counts the people and among many other things. They also, count anything from new business starts to exports and all sorts of other things. And the Commerce Department is part of or the Census Bureau is part of the Commerce Department. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics counts the jobs, and that's part of the U.S. Department of Labor. And really, those data come out of a partnership between the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the state labor market information agencies like MERIC, the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center here in Missouri, where the folks at the state level are basically the people who are collecting a lot of the information, then it all gets processed and released by the BLS. And then the third kind of big of the big three federal statistical agency is the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is actually quite a bit smaller than BLS or Census, and BEA counts the money. So it's a little less kind of a little bit more on some kind of economic issues and a little less on some of the straight up like labor market information. There are a couple others that are worth knowing too. The part of the Department of Labor is the Employment and Training Administration, which funds things, for instance, like ONET. There are other agencies. The Department of Education, you could say, counts the graduates because they have the National Center for Education Statistics. And then, there's whole other area where people get information, and it's important to kind of recognize those. And those are private sources and proprietary data vendors that you may or may not be familiar with. But in those instances, a lot of those particular folks are all pulling from the federal data agencies. Like they can't produce their product without the input of what the feds collect. So our federal statistical data agencies are really important to understanding our labor market. So over the next 40 minutes or so, what I want to cover with you all is what are some, here are some common questions that you might be asked. And one of the first one is how educated is our workforce? And that's being able to look up things like educational attainment rates? Or what do employers need workers to do in terms of where's demand coming from, and how much are they being paid? So what's the going rate for a particular job? What do you need workers to do in the future too? That's always a question of where are there going to be jobs in the future? What should I, train people for? Or what type of career should I choose? Commuting information is always something that people are interested too. So where do workers come from? And then finally, what do, my workers look like? The people who work in different industries tend to have some different characteristics. And so there's ways to answer all of these questions. So starting with the first question, what are the characteristics of the overall workforce? And here, this is where the U.S. Census Bureau is really critical in terms of helping understand what your workforce looks like. The Census Bureau itself has three big programs that help provide us with demographic information. The one that you're probably all most familiar with is the decennial census, which is going to be closed at the end of September. So if you haven't filled out your census form yet, just stop what you're doing now and go do that right away. And if you don't do it right away, wait till the end of this webinar and then go fill out your census. And that's obviously once every 10 years. The other big program in terms of counting people is the Population Estimates Program, and that's how we get information on just the numbers of people in a given year, which is really important as you get to the end of a decade and those census numbers feel a bit dated, but the population estimates give you an estimate for every year. And then the third big program is the American Community Survey. And that's the one that's probably most relevant to what we're talking about today. So the American Community Survey came out in, I guess, in the 2000s, and it replaced the long form census. If those of you are old enough to remember that there was a long form census that asked a lot of detailed questions. And it's a real survey. Actually, off to the side here is a letter that a friend of mine who was a planning professor at Kansas State received. She was very thrilled that she was asked to fill out the ACS survey. She actually got a similar letter this year too. So twice. She's very lucky. I guess that's a very nerdy thing to say if you're feeling lucky to get an ACS letter. Anyway, the ACS covers four different subtopic areas of demographic. There's demographic questions, some social questions, some economic questions, and then housing questions. And it's conducted over the course of a year. And, you can see that, that each year you're getting about 1.5% of the population each year. And it's done by mail, phone, and in person. Now, one of the things that's important to remember about the ACS is that there's two data series that come from this. One is the 1 year estimates, which has 12 months of collected data. And that's really for big places. Really, this all comes down, it's driven by sample size, right? And you want to be able to have, because the survey, you want to have a representative sample. So for 12 months, for places that are with a population of over 65,000, they can access 1 year estimates. For places that are smaller than that, then you have to use the 5 year estimates. And so if you see, for instance, 2014 to 2018, that means that there's 5 years of survey responses. And again, the 5 year estimates tend to be the most reliable because they have the largest sample size, but they're also the least current. So there's a little bit of a trade-off between those two places. So if you're in St. Charles County, you can, for instance, get access to the, 1 year estimates. Whereas if you're in Worth County, you have to use the 5 year estimates. It's also important to note that if you, are trying to compare St. Charles to Worth County, then you should use the 5 year estimates so that you're actually like comparing likes. So there's several ways to access ACS data. Most ACS data can be found in what's now called data.census.gov, and data.census.gov replaced this past year, actually replaced American Fact Finder. And so there you can dive in, there's a number of filters, you can get a bunch of different information and tables from that. But I would imagine for a lot of you all, if you're looking for like, I just need a number, I just need to answer a simple question, then a really good place to look is a tool called QuickFacts, where you can get information quickly. So All right, hopefully you can now see quick facts. And here, this is what it looks like when you just, if you just Google census.gov and quick facts, something will come up that'll look like this. You'll see that it, it has information. It comes up with information about the U.S., all different types of basic questions. And one of the things that we want to answer is, okay, well, how educated is my workforce? What is the educational attainment level in my county? So if we use just a sample county, I'm just going to type in Franklin County outside of St. Louis, Franklin County, and there's a lot of Franklin counties, so I'm going to choose Franklin County, Missouri. And so there's Franklin County, Missouri, next to the US. And I'm going to scroll down and I can see in terms of education, quick facts basically gives me two numbers. It gives me high school graduates. So for, the percent of people with a high school degree, age 25 and plus. For educational attainment, we typically tend to look at 25 plus because there's a lot of movement younger than that, as you might imagine. And then there's bachelor's degree or higher, again, for age 25 plus. And when you see 2014 to 2018, that means that it's coming from that 5-year American Community Survey. So it's 5 years of data. And we can see when we look at the actual numbers here, we can see that in Franklin County, it's 88% of people have at least a high school degree, which is about on par with the national average. And then when we look at the bachelor's degree, we see that it's about 20%, whereas nationwide it's about 31%. So, in Franklin County, the problem isn't necessarily getting people to high school degrees. It's a matter of getting them post-secondary education. So if you're running a workforce program or, working with the community college in that area, which would be East Central Community College, one of the things you might want to think about is like, okay, there's probably, a lot of people that may have either no post-secondary that need some or some post-secondary college, but they never completed a degree. So maybe focus our efforts on those folks because there's a real gap between, that county and the average. And if you wanted to compare, for instance, Franklin County, not to the US, but to the state of Missouri, you could type in Missouri up at the top. And then you get another column where you can then go back and see, how that compares to the state. So quick facts is if you're just looking for some basic socioeconomic data or some kind of basic characteristics, quick facts is really a great place to look to get that information really fast without putting too much effort into it or spending too much time on it. If you want something more detailed, then there's data.census.gov, which we can go to another time. All right. Oops. Next. All right. So the next question is, what do my workers do and how much are they being paid? And, if we want to know what kinds of activities our workers are involved in, we typically look at things like industry and occupational employment data. So some of you may be familiar with the NAICS system, which is used to classify different types of industry or industry employment. But oftentimes, if we want to know what workers do, we care about occupation. So it's important to know that, so industry data or NAICS-based data is what companies make, or describes what companies make, like food manufacturing or professional and technical services. But occupations describe what workers do. So managers, nurses, carpenters, etc. One of the important things to keep in mind is that job titles and occupations aren't always the same. This is one of those those things of kind of understanding how to look up information. Job titles tend to vary wildly between industries, even if they have similar sets of activities, and we use occupations to classify those things. But oftentimes when people start, well, what's the job? And they describe an actual job as opposed to an occupation. So if we want to convert a job description into an occupation, there's thing called the ONET Autocoder. ONET is actually a super useful tool that has all sorts of information about different occupations and is definitely something worth exploring. But if we want to look up different types of occupations, one of the ones that I recently did a workforce study related to ag workforce careers, food, ag, and forestry workforce, or food, ag, and forestry related jobs. One of the big occupations that people were, or big jobs that was an in-demand job was custom applicators, which are people who basically, drive tractors with sprayers off the back, and they need to have all sorts of information or all sorts of knowledge about things like agronomy and whatnot. But custom applicator isn't an actual occupation. So it's hard to look up, well, what's the date, how many are there? What are the trends? So that's where a tool like the autocoder here comes in handy, because I can type in custom applicator. And there you go. Here's the best matches that are there. And you can see ag equipment operators, which kind of fits, or, people handling pesticide. That's another one that comes up. So, in this case, I know I'm looking at agricultural equipment operators, and that, takes me to some information about, here are some different titles, the job titles that go with that particular occupation. The way that if you're looking up occupations, the equivalent in industry, for industry data, it's the NAICS system, which some of you may be familiar with. In occupations, it's the standard occupational classification system. And it's just a way of categorizing different types of work activities. And it's a hierarchical system. So we have 23 broad groups, and it works its way down to over 800 detailed occupations. So as an example, a major group would be life, physical, and social science occupations, and then it becomes a little bit more specific, and then we have life scientists, and then within life scientists, we have agricultural and food scientists, and then the really detailed occupation is soil and plant scientists. And you can see the coding of this. The way it works is, there's all zeros here for the major group, and then you add a 1 for the minor group, and then another number here for the broad, and then the detailed occupations. They're all kind of grouped together. So that's an important thing to know just for looking up this kind of information. So how do we know how much people should be paid for a job in a particular place? Well, this is where the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics occupational employment statistics come in handy. This is where we get our wage information. The folks at the state labor market information agencies basically call a sample of companies from around the state and in different industries and ask them about the pay for different types of occupations in their particular firm. The wage estimates through the OES are available annually, so it's like only once a year, and we can get information for nation state MSAs, and then also for more rural areas, kind of some broad regions. And we can also get it at a number of different levels. So the link here that's here will take you to this website, the BLS website, which provides us with, in this case, it's I have Joplin selected. Actually, the link itself takes you to here, where you have all your different states and all the different available geographies. In this instance, we're going to look at Joplin. So here's Joplin. I'll click on Joplin, and it takes me to this particular page. So here's the 2019 numbers, which is the most recently available numbers that we have in Joplin. And you see we have a bunch of different groups. Here are your major groups for occupations. And then when you scroll down, here are the specific occupations. So say I wanted to look up just a specific occupation. I wanted to look up CNC machine operator, which is, computer, numerical controlled tool operators. I can type in the search box, and that gets me, a list of all the occupations that have computer in the name. and I can put numerical, and there we go. So there's computer numerical controlled tool operators, so CNC machine operators. And I can see in the Joplin area that there are about 120 CNC machine operators. And that, you know, in terms of the median wage is a little over $17 an hour. The mean is, again, $17.50 an hour. And the average annual is about $36,000. So if you are, you know, a machinist or a CNC machine operator in Joplin and you're, you know, interviewing for a job, you kind of know what the going rate is. This can help you figure it out. If you're an employer and you're having a hard time finding CNC machine operators because you're offering, say, $31,000 a year as a salary, well, that's may show that you're kind of on the low end and you probably, you know, need to pay more. One of the things that we'll slide back here. There is more information. This is, again, this is what, these are the different geographies in Missouri that's there. This is a map of the different regions where this information is offered. But one of the things that I'd like to highlight too is that if you want more information just besides what are the mean and the median, that you can get information at the hourly and annual 10th, 25th, 75th, 90th percentile ranges by clicking on this Excel file, which will give you all sorts of information from basically all over it's a giant Excel file. And so here it is. I downloaded it. You can see how many rows there are. Joplin somewhere in the middle. And so that gets you you can see that here is all the occupations in Joplin. There's the total employment and there's the mean. And then when you scroll over to the side, there's your range of your, you know, 10th percentile for hourly wages up to your 90th. And this can give you a sense of this is what maybe an entry level wage is. And this is what an experienced wage is. So it gives you maybe more of a range than what you get from just an average. That said, the folks at BLS will quickly tell you that it's not entry and experienced. It's because it could just be, you know, the 10th could just be a low paying employer and the 90th could be a high paying employer. But that's, but you can use it just to get a good sense of what the range is. All right, so moving on, what do we need our workers to do in the future? Well, this is an area where we're looking for some projections of what occupations are, you know, can we expect to see growth? And this is, I mean, this can be an important consideration for if you're a job seeker, if you're a student or just a job seeker, like I want to move into a job that has potential to grow, where there's going to be a lot of opportunity as opposed to something where maybe, you know, there's fewer jobs in the future. Or, you know, if you're, you know, you work at a community college or and you're trying to figure out what programming you want to have, because you want your graduates to be able to get jobs. So where should we invest our resources? That's where this information is important. In terms of the projections, the occupational employment projections, they can be, again, useful because they identify kind of existing skills and jobs in the labor market and where there's going to be demand. You get a sense of maybe where some of the gaps are. We're going to have a lot of growth here, but we're not training as many people as we need to. So it can help people find jobs or help, as I said earlier, educational institutions do, figure out some of their programming or what investments they want to make. The important thing to keep in mind about all these projections, whether it's those done by state agencies like Merrick, which I'll show you in a minute, or by proprietary data vendors, is that no one really has a crystal ball. So no one really knows. So they're not really good about predicting changes in the business cycle or an upcoming recession. So if you look at the projections that are available now, well, our economy has changed dramatically in the last 4 or 5 months, and that is not something that's going to be necessarily included in some of the projections. And they tend to be a little bit, they assume growth, but it tends to be a little bit straight line-ish in the sense of kind of past performance is an indication of future growth. So growth or decline. So you kind of take it with a grain of salt, but it's, it gives you a good sense of where growth or opportunity is coming from. Within the state of Missouri, the best place probably to look for projections is going to be the good folks at Merrick. And you can see the link that's there. So if you go to their website and look up workforce research and then look up occupational projections, they have it for each of the different workforce regions around the area. They tend to mostly be aligned with the workforce boards, although around St. Louis, the St. Charles and Jefferson Franklin and St. Louis workforce boards are all kind of grouped into one metro area workforce board. And so you can click on one of those and then download the projections. In this case, this is the southwest region of Missouri, again, down in that Joplin area. And you get a sense of, there's a number of different, they have it by the 2-digit groups and as well as all kind of the detailed occupations. And they have the number of jobs for 2016 to 2026. So it's a 10-year period where it's available. Here are your wages. And again, they follow kind of that those range of wages that we talked about before. They get a sense of, you have a sense of some of the annual openings in terms of, because it's not just net new jobs, it's, how many people come and go, leave different jobs or leave the workforce, how many opportunities there are going to be. And then they can give you some information about the typical educational requirement or experience required for those jobs. One of the value add things that the folks at Merrick do with these projections, which I think is helpful, is they provide grades for the jobs, or these are jobs where we, an A+ job where we can see that there's going to be growth in the future. It's the kind of thing that, again, helps you get a sense of, I only want to look at like high growth jobs or only jobs that are going to grow in the future. And this allows you to sort by that using their grades. The other thing that they do too is they give you a sense of the, I guess it's now, next, and later type jobs, where now jobs are things that people can, move right into a job with. If they're coming out of high school, for instance, it can be a now job. Those next jobs tend to be ones where they tend to be more like the middle skill jobs, where with some experience or a little bit of education and training, you can move into those jobs. And then the later jobs are the jobs that typically require greater degrees of post-secondary education. So it's just another way of kind of helping to sort sort the information and find what you're looking for, depending on whatever question you're looking to ask. But again, if you're looking for this kind of future-oriented information with occupations, Merrick is your go-to source for that. Another area that is a common question is, how far are workers in your community willing to travel? That's commuting is always a question that people ask, and there, the best place to get some of this information is a program that is actually, it's a partnership between the Census Bureau and each of the individual states, called the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics Program, so the LEHD. And as I said, it's a partnership between the census and state LMI shops, so with each of the individual shops. So it took a while for this program to roll out. Probably over the course of a decade. Two of the last states were like New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And because it involves sharing of people's personal information, they actually, in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, had to change something in the state constitution for those states to be actually able to participate in this program. But what it does is it connects information from the unemployment insurance system, which is where we get a lot of our employment data. So you can think about the industry of the employer, the wages that are being paid, to individual worker data, which gives us some demographic characteristics, and it connects those two things via people's Social Security numbers. So there's a matching process that goes on, and all this information is behind tight security at the Census Bureau, lots of locked doors, and when the numbers get too small in different places, the numbers then get fuzzed to maintain anonymity and protect people's privacy. But there's a couple different tools that the LEHD program has that are super helpful. And the one that everyone loves, and this is probably the one that if there's any of these things that you're going to go play with later today or whatnot, is going to be this tool. Is called On the Map. And this provides information about commuting patterns. And so you get a sense of where people are employed and where they live. And there's a number of different analyses that you can do. And I'm going to pull that up here right now. And so if I wanted to look up, for instance, the example I had on the screen over here, you'll get something that looks like this. It's the map of the United States, and I'm interested in Taney County. I'm going to type in Taney, and I'm going to look up counties. And there's only one Taney County in the U.S. That's in Missouri. And there it is. There's Taney County. I'll pull it up. And then I'm going to hit perform selection on this. And there's two different areas that we need to know. There's where workers live. So that's the home category, and where workers work. So two different pieces. And the analysis type, there's 5 different types of analysis. At the most basic level, we have the inflow outflow, and that tells you how many people are coming into the county and how many people are leaving the county to go to work on a given day. And here I'm going to look at just all jobs and just the most recent year available, which is 2017. These patterns don't change dramatically from year to year. From decade to decade they do, but from year to year, not so much. So with the inflow outflow, I'm just going to hit go, and it's going to tell me, here it comes, that Taney County is a bit of a job center, and that more people, 12,000 people, come into Taney County than leave it over the course of a given day. So it is a job center. If I want to see how far people are willing to travel to go to work, that's the distance and direction tool that's here. And again, these are for workers. And so I'll hit go for people who work in Taney County, and I'll hit go, and I can see, zoom out just a little bit here. You can see that a bunch of people here, I'm going to turn off the points, but you can see that, I mean, this is where a lot of people who, of the workers, they work and they're in and around Branson, but there's a good number of people that come from Springfield and kind of Ozark and Christian County and over in Stone County and even up from Arkansas as well, but they're kind of up and down that 65 corridor. And this gives you a sense off to the side. You can see that, you know, half the people who work in Taney County, you know, travel less than 10 miles, where 16% travel more than 60 miles. If I want to know, you know, what share are they coming from different counties, that's the destination tool that's here. And again, I'll just do county to county as opposed to place, and I'll hit go. And in this case, I can see that again, half the people, about 54% of the workforce in Taney County live, that work in Taney County live in Taney County. Another 9% of the people who work in Taney County live in Stone County. 7% live in Greene County. Another almost 7% in Christian County. So you can see basically where people are coming from. For the people in Branson, if I wanted to know, or in Taney County, where do they go to work? For residents of Taney County, I would just switch it to home. And then, and again, you can see of workers who live in Taney County, 61% live there. So again, there's slightly different, you know, there's slightly different things. You know, Greene County is next, then Stone County. So, so you get a sense of how this could be a useful tool. You can also do things, it's worth mentioning the area profile here as well. Here I'll look at, let's do, we can clear our selection, and I'll just select Greene County instead. and to get just a bit of a different picture. And if I wanted to know what workers in Greene County, different characteristics of workers in Greene County look like. Waiting. I get, there we go. Here's, here we can zoom in. It gives us just the county. So you can see where most of those jobs are. Most of those jobs in Springfield, in Greene County are in Springfield. You get a sense of some of the age range, some of the wages. You can see if I want to know, where the manufacturing jobs in Greene County are, I can click on this off to the side. And it's going to load up for me. There we go. And you can see where the different manufacturing hotspots are in and around Springfield. If I wanted to know about educational services, I could do that as well. Just choosing a different example in and around Springfield. So anyway, so you can get a sense of how this tool could be particularly useful. So again, we could spend a lot of examples on this. I want to move on to some other things, but I would encourage you all to play with this. It's actually it's actually a super fun. If you're into such things, it's a super fun tool. If you're not into such things, I can't help you. This is the kind of way I spend some of my time. In any case, one of the other things that's actually really kind of neat about this tool is that you can export a lot of the stuff that comes out of here in different formats. For instance, you can export it as a shapefile and put it into ArcGIS, for instance, if you use GIS on a regular basis. You can also export it as a KML file and put it into Google Earth. So what the slide here is showing is a project I did about 5 years ago in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where we were looking at some different neighborhoods in Grand Rapids. That's highlighted in yellow. These are 17 different census tracts. And you can get a sense where, like, this is the area where, African-American workers live. And this is the area where Hispanic workers live. And so it's kind of a neat, way for presenting information is to put it into Google Earth. It makes it look a little bit nicer than just a screenshot. So another cool thing you can do with On the Map. So finally, how do worker characteristics vary by industry? And to answer this question, we have, again, this is another product of the LEHD program, that is called the Quarterly Workforce Indicators. And this allows us to have information. What the QWI does is give us information about different demographic characteristics of workers in different industries. And so here, I'll switch back to here. And the QWI is here. So if you type in QWI Explorer into the Google, up it comes. It'll read that you're in Missouri. So it comes up for Missouri already. And you get you have by quarters, you have information. The most recent is the fourth quarter of 2019. And if I wanted to know for a few different characteristics for a different industry or different geographies, you have options of counties, metro, micro areas, or workforce investment boards, which is kind of a nice, a nice option. And so we can look at the Jefferson Franklin Workforce Board as an example. That'll come up, and that gives us the age ranges of all the people that are working in Jefferson and Franklin counties. If I want, instead of raw numbers, I want to have essentially percentages. I can click on Normalize on Group. And so now I can see here's my percentages of people. So 4% of the workforce is age 14 to 18. 20% is age 45 to 54. If I wanted to know, how about manufacturing? What does manufacturing look like in Jefferson and Franklin County in terms of ages? Then I could click on NAICS sector and get manufacturing. And I can see that manufacturing skews older, where almost over 45%, almost 50%, well, actually over 50% of manufacturing workers in Jefferson and Franklin counties are over the age of 45. If I wanted to know something like gender, I'd click on sex here, and I can see that 68% of manufacturing workers in Jefferson and Franklin County are male, 32% are female. Again, not surprising. And you could look at also things like race and ethnicity, or race, and you see that it's not a very racially diverse place, Jefferson Franklin County. So 95% of all manufacturing workers are there, are white. And so this is this can be really useful information for a number of reasons. Because it can tell you a little something about the industries in your particular region, particularly when you drill down. The workforce, for instance, is aging. We know the workforce is aging overall, but is the workforce in your industry aging faster than the overall workforce? So, if we're looking at food manufacturing in the Southwest Workforce Investment Board region of Missouri, you can see that it's about the same as the state overall. Maybe it's slightly older. You can looking at gender in different industries. You can see that again, male, men dominate the manufacturing sector, women dominate the healthcare sector, and which we know, but it helps us as we think about our economic development strategies. If we're creating jobs in manufacturing, we're essentially creating jobs for men. If we're creating jobs in healthcare, it means we're going to need a lot more women in the workforce, or we're going to need women in the workforce to fill those jobs, because women tend to fill those jobs. Not exclusively, but primarily. If you're creating jobs in professional services, it means you're creating jobs for people with degrees. So that's where those are the people who tend to benefit the most from these types of programs. And you can also tell if certain groups are maybe over or underrepresented in certain industries, for instance. So you could look at what does the construction industry look like in terms of its racial composition, and how does that compare to the workforce overall? Is it representative? Is it not? And this information can also be helpful too if you're thinking about if there's a layoff. So if you lose 200 jobs at a food manufacturing plant, you can assume that 2/3 of those people that lost a job are going to be men, or 20% are going to be over 55, or we can determine a lot of different pull a lot of information. We can use this information in a lot of different ways to answer a number of different questions. So it's really kind of useful information to have handy. All right, so I'm getting about to the time where we want to have some questions. So I'm just going to go through a few other places. And again, this is a little bit more for your reference later on than it is for now. But there are a lot of other places to get labor market information compared to what we just showed here. So there are a lot of data aggregators and some private data vendors. I'm going to focus a little bit on some of those data aggregators. So one of the big ones that's really helpful, and I would, it's one of those things to bookmark if you find yourself needing to answer a lot of these questions regularly, is something called Stats America. And Stats America is funded by the U.S. Economic Development Administration, with the primary purpose of helping like regional planning commissions or councils of governments or whatnot with their CEDS, their comprehensive economic development strategy process. It basically pulls all this information from all these different sources into one place. It's developed and supported by Indiana, the good folks at Indiana University. And as you can see on their dashboard, if you go to their website, they have a bunch of different tools that are available, and links to some of the same tools that I'm showing you here, like the LEHD tools, the quarterly workforce indicators are on the map. They have links to it off of that landing page. If you wanted to look up just your county, for instance, here's an example from Stats America on New Madrid County, Missouri. And again, there's all the information, different categories. You're pulling information from different sources. You get your rank of the county in the U.S. for context. You can put, counties side by side, much like in kind of like QuickFacts had side by side. So you can compare one county to another, one county to the state. Again, super helpful. Another good source for economic data is FRED, which is produced by the St. Louis Federal Reserve. So FRED is the Federal Reserve Economic Data Tool. It's another great data aggregator and a good place to go look for just basic economic information. So for instance, here's an example of comparing unemployment in Greene County to Missouri to Boone County. And you can pull it up and there's a chart. So it's just really fast, quick and dirty information. They also have what they call GeoFred if you're looking for more visually displayed information. So here's an example of that if you were looking up, I don't know what I had here, I guess just average wages or whatnot. But GeoFred is another option. So again, that's through the St. Louis Fed. And FRED is also available in app form. Again, you know, you can have this information in your pocket, just on your phone. The other aggregator that I want to mention is many of you probably are already aware of, is All Things Missouri, which was developed by MU's Extension's CARES program, the Center for Applied Research and Engagement Systems. You've probably seen this demonstrated at some point in time, but again, it's another clearinghouse of publicly available data with that good kind of map interface to try and pull that information that you're looking for quick. The last thing I want to say before we go into some questions is oftentimes when you're using this information, you might run into a problem or something might not seem right. From my experience, I came to Missouri after being in DC for about 15 years, and I worked with folks at the different statistical agencies over that time. And I can tell you that the people who work in the federal statistical agencies care very deeply about their data, and they want to make sure that people use their data and use it properly. And so if you ever run into a problem, they may seem like big, faceless, nameless bureaucracies, but they're actually filled with people who really just want to help you out, that are, you know, very friendly. So please don't be afraid to pick up the phone and ask a question, because you'll end up with an answer. I think the same thing can be said too about if you're looking for Merrick. Again, there's people there who will answer your call to help you out. There are a number of different regional contacts around the state. This is just an example from the Southwest region. So Kristen Arnett, who's super nice, will answer, if you're in the Southwest region, will answer your questions. But again, these agencies are filled with people who care about their data and are, so don't be afraid to ask them. They're not nameless, faceless bureaucracies. Before we move to questions, I just want to let you know, here's the PowerPoint. Matt and Amy will post the PowerPoint online. So you can go through it at your own pace, and all the links are here. So this is the stuff that we covered. It'll all be there afterwards. So if you feel rushed going through here, or what was that link, it's all there, and it's going to be online for you to take advantage of. So with that, I will take a breath and answer any questions. So Matt and Amy, I don't know if there are any questions.